Bhagavad Gita is a book of mankind's collected experience of and answers to life's most basic questions. Who I am, from where do I come, what is my purpose and destiny, and most practically, how do I find happiness? These podcasts originate in the lectures of Neil Bhatt, a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. They are presented here in 20 to 30-minute segments, each covering 3 of the Gita's 701 verses. Welcome to Gita Wisdom for Daily Living.
So we had been discussing chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, Yoga of Renunciation of Action. So we have been learning from Bhagavan the thought that I am not this limited being. Bhagavan demolished our traditional view of who I am as a limited being in chapter 2, and then told us that gradually you have to realize the Jiva Brahma Aikya, that this conditioned self, the conditioned consciousness that I consider myself, and the unconditioned consciousness, the all-pervading Supreme Self, are one and the same. And in that journey, the first step is to purify my internal instrument. My internal instrument, the mind and intellect. For that, there are several paths, but the one which is easily available to me right now is to continue working in this world driven by my rajas and tamas, but strive to achieve sattva. So purifying my internal instrument, because that is the only instrument available to me to realize any truth, any knowledge. All the knowledge that I know today has come from my observations in the world outside, where I received the sensation and it created impression on my mind, which is the internal instrument, and was deciphered by my intellect, which is the deciding entity, a part of that internal instrument. So the knowledge which I have gathered and created a perception of my own self as a limited being has come from this internal instrument. The internal instrument has decided that this must be me. So to overcome that impression, now I have to work on that internal instrument to clean it up. And in that quest, Bhagavan said, all you can do is act in this world driven by your own rajas and tamas, but constantly think that I'm doing it for the greater good, for everyone else, not just for me, which is the basis of Karma Yoga, that I expand my identification for whom I am working in this world. If I'm a very selfish person, I'm just working for myself. But when I expand my identification with my family, and I'm working for my family, as I continue expanding my identification, then I'm working for my community, for my nation. And Bhagavan said, continue expanding that identification by Karma Yoga. Yoga of working in this world without any particular expectations for me. And because that's the first steps. In chapter 3, we will learn Karma Yoga. Then in chapter 4, Gnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, I need to now renounce this sense of I am the doer. That even I'm working for the greater good, I still have the sense of I am the doer, I'm working outside. Because that sense has to be overcome by thinking that I am not the doer. So renounce that notion that I am the doer in the knowledge that the self remains inactive. The body, mind and intellect are acting, but the self, which is empowering body, mind and intellect, is inactive. And now in chapter 5 is the renunciation of that agency, that who I am as the doer. So the agency which right now takes charge of my action is my ego. My ego says I am the doer. Because of I, things are happening. If I'm not there, things will not happen. That ego is the conditioned consciousness, which enables me to act, but also takes credit for my actions. So Bhagavan said, you should give up that sense of agency, which is sannyasa. Sannyasa is giving up the sense of agency. The tyaga is karma phala tyaga. And how to do it is Bhagavan is now explaining in this chapter, and we have learned from him that the first exercise that any voluntary or involuntary activity which I notice in myself, I should make a note that it is not the self which is doing it. Even as we say swasan, jignan, asnan, even the breathing, I should know that I am not doing it because I really don't have any agenda for it. I didn't really plan for it and say I'll be taking X amount of breath this morning. It happens automatically, and therefore I should know that I am not the doer. It is happening as the part of the Prakriti. This exercise is given to us by Bhagavan, saying this is how you clean up your internal instrument, and this is how you give up the sense of agency. So last few verses we are seeing tat buddhayaha, tat atmanaha, tat nisthaha, tat parayanaha. Up till now I was established in tvam, this limited self. Now you should establish a buddhi in tat, that which is unconditioned. So this is a journey of just identification from this to that. Right now I identify with the conditioned consciousness, which becomes ego, because I identified with the actions of this body, mind and intellect. When I change that identification with tat, that all-pervading, say tat buddhi. This buddhi, which is the dissecting instrument, which is deciding what is right and what is wrong, now you have to point towards that all-pervading self. Even yourself, that also should be completely established in that identification with the all-pervading self. Bhagavan continuing said, Bahyasparsesu asaktatma. So the biggest difficulty I encounter in that exercise of establishing my buddhi and my mind in that the greater self is the sense objects contacting my senses, or my senses contacting the sense objects. That sensation is the distraction. Bhagavan said, you have to overcome that distraction. Bahyasparsesu asaktatma, who does not get attached, means distracted by these contacts with the world of objects outside. Let the body contact the world outside, let the mind contact the world outside, but do not get attached to those contacts. It is something like if I'm really engrossed in reading a novel, which is very interesting, then things happening around me, I'm completely unattached. Even though my other senses are contacting the sense object, like sound, somebody calling me from outside. But I'm so engrossed in my reading that I don't hear that call from outside. So that I have become completely unattached. It says, in the same manner, when you get absorbed in the thought of that all-pervading self that you are, you're identifying that versus the limited self, you become bahyasparsesu asaktatma. Contacts are happening just as they were happening before, but I'm not getting attached to them. Vindati atmani yat sukham. That very idea that I am not this limited being and I am part of this all-pervading self gives me that unlimited joy and happiness. So I'm not seeking any joy and happiness outside. Vindati atmani yat sukham. Sa brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam asnute. And he achieves that eternal happiness. So here is a litmus test that when I should consider myself that I'm established in that identification with the greater self, he said when you become completely unattached. Unattached does not mean unaware, but unattached. I'm aware of so many things, but I'm not getting attached to them. I hear news from outside. I'm aware of what's happening, but I'm not attached to them. It doesn't affect me, what's happening in Bangladesh or what's happening in Russia or Ukraine or Afghanistan. I'm aware of them, but I'm not attached to them. But then there are situations occur in my life, I'm not only aware of them, but getting attached to them. He said, this difference in your thinking, in your response to the world of happenings outside, if you synchronize them as one response of unattachment, then you become established in that self. That's the litmus test. Sa Brahma Yoga Yuktatma Sukham Akshayam Asnute. He finds that eternal happiness, which is where we started. That I want that unbroken happiness, and Bhagavan said the only way to achieve it is to become completely unattached to the happenings in the world outside. Once you achieve that, Sukham Akshayam Asnute, you will achieve that unending happiness in no time. How to think so that we can achieve that state? So he said, you change your thinking and analyze what is happiness which you are receiving from this world. Yehi sansparsaja bhoga. This enjoyments which I am getting from this world. In my life, there are enjoyable events and there are miserable events. How can we decide? What is your criteria? The criteria is when my sense organ contact the world outside. So when I hear music, sense object is sound and my sense organ is my hearing. When they come together and it gives me joy and I enjoy that music, I call that an enjoyable experience. But that sound is so noisy that it's painful, I consider miserable experience. Same experience of my hearing contacting the world of sound outside, one experience is enjoyable, other is miserable. So Bhagavan said, Yehi sansparsaja bhoga, that those enjoyments which I consider enjoyable, they are born out of contacts with the world of objects outside. As you see, 5 senses and 5 sense objects. Sabda, sparsa, rupa, rasa, gandha. Dukha yonayaha evate. This is the revelation. All those enjoyments, all those contacts with the world outside, they're the wombs of unhappiness. Now this is something, even though we know, we do not want to accept it. Anything which gives me happiness has equal potential to give me unhappiness. But while I'm enjoying that, I overlook that potential. Something which I eat can give me joy has equal potential to kill me. But while I'm enjoying it, I am willing to overlook the negative side effect. While I'm eating sweet, I'm very aware that it can give me diabetes. And the diabetes can kill me. But while I'm enjoying that sweet, I'm willing to overlook that side effect. I overlook that potentiality that can create diabetes and I can die. So Bhagavan said, there is no exception of any contact in this world which gives you enjoyment. Every contact which gives you enjoyment has equal capability to give you unhappiness. Dukha yonayaha evate. All of them are wombs of sorrows. All those contacts which give me enjoyments are wombs of sorrows. So where the sorrows come from? Bhagavan said, exactly the same place you are getting your enjoyments. Adi antavanta kaunteya. All those contexts have another limitation. If enjoyment, if I can extend it out till eternity, that's not a problem because I have diluted that potential of pain. Because the enjoyment part I have extended out in time, which can outlive my own life. I typically say that when the market is booming or business is doing very well, I just want this market to last till I retire. As long as it lasts till I retire, I don't really care what happens afterward. But that's not in my hand. So Bhagavan said, because you don't have a control over the timings, you should know that all these contacts have beginning and an end. There is no experience which is everlasting. Even the great concert which I'm enjoying starts at one point of time and ends at one point of time. Even though a Gita class has time limit, it starts at 9:45, will end at 11:50. He said, no, I'm really enjoying it, let's continue. Well, there is a limit to it. You may enjoy for 15 minutes more, an hour. At some point you will say, we need to get out of it. And even if the other one feels boring, that's the same thing. When is going to end? When is going to end? Well, it will end if you're patient enough. Adi antavantaha. This is where at the graduation time everybody is so happy. When you're graduating from high school, graduating from college, where you thought that it was never going to end, this drudgery which I'm going through. But then when it ends, you say, oh, thank God it is now over. That's the celebration of graduation. So Bhagavan said, Adi antavanta. These enjoyments, as the sorrows, have beginning and an end. Now when in the enjoyment I can understand the beginning and the end part, in sorrows I don't. Sorrow seems like they're eternal. Once it starts, I don't know when I'm going to get out of it. I don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. So our time scale changes. In the enjoyment, the time is compressed, and I feel, oh boy, the concert just started, and now he's packing up. But when I'm suffering, it seems like time has just stopped. Na teshu ramate buddhaha. The wise people, they do not indulge in them. So ramate is Gujarati playing. They don't play in it. When we are playing, the time literally stops. We really don't have any sense of how much time has passed. So you're completely engrossed in it. That's the attitude you have to avoid when you're enjoying the context with the world outside. Remember, at the very time when you're enjoying, this is beginning and end, and this is equal potential to give me unhappiness. Every relationship that I have which gives me happiness at one point of time, gives me unhappiness in the other point of time. Saknotihi eva yah sodhum prak sharir vimokshanat kama krodha udbhavam vegam sa yuktah sa sukhi naraha. I don't need to wait till I retire, or I don't need to wait till I die. Bhagavan said, in this life, while you are living, one who can withstand this force of desire and anger, these impulses which are created by my desire to acquire something and getting angry when I can't achieve it. This impulse which shows up in my behavior, I get goosebumps when I'm really afraid of something, my face lights up when somebody I like shows up. He said, all that, if I can withstand in a sense, I don't let it affect my internal instrument. Prak sharira vimokshanat, before I leave this body. It is not something I have to do after my life. I have to do it right from the beginning till the end of my life. This is not a one-time exercise to control my desire and anger. All throughout my life, till I die, I have to have this vigilance to withstand this force created by my desire and anger. Desire when fulfilled is enjoyment. Desire when unfulfilled is unhappiness. Yah antah sukha, yah antah aramaha, tatha antah jyotihi eva yaha. So yah antah sukha, whose happiness is within his self. As I said, once I have expanded my identity, then all my contexts outside are all within me. Right now I feel lonely because by myself I can enjoy it. I need a company. Well, without a company, there is no life. There is no life in this town. There is no nightlife. All that because I feel incomplete. And I say, once I expand my identity to include everyone in it and everything in it, then I'll be sukhi. I'm happy by myself. Yah antah sukha. Yah antah aramaha. One who is also relaxing in himself. So we need vacation to relax. I can't relax in my job. I can relax when I'm with my family. Well, let's go and get vacation. Well, leave the family here. We just go by ourselves. When I feel relaxed, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I feel comfortable the way I am, and I feel comfortable where things are. Ya antaha sukha, antaha jyotihi eva. And I don't need any other knowledge to know myself. So right now, to know myself, I have to see what people are thinking about me. Am I tall enough? Am I wealthy enough? Am I smart enough? All that is judged by my perception of how the world is viewing me. But once I create an awareness of myself, as I as the standard, I am the standard and I'm judging myself, that who I am does not require any other comparison in the world outside. Antaha jyotiya saha yogi brahma nirvana. Such a person is a yogi. Not that one who is performing yoga, but the one who has established himself that he is happy by himself, he is aware of his own self, and he is relaxed in his own self. Such a person, yogi, Brahma Nirvanam, he is extinguished in Brahman. In other words, this ego is now extinguished. Ego is no longer active. This identification with the smaller self is no longer bothering me. Body is doing its part, it's decaying, fine, that's its job. Mind is what it is and intellect what it is, but it is not me. I'm extinguishing that identification with the limited being. Nirvana is extinguishing something. Brahma bhutaha adhigacchati. And he becomes one with that Brahman. As we said, the space in the room, once you remove all the limitations, it becomes one with the space outside. There was no real transaction took place that we have transferred this space to the outside space. But the identification is dropped between the space and the walls, floor and ceiling. As the identification drops with this body, mind and intellect, Brahma bhutaha adhigacchati. He achieves that oneness with that Brahman, that all-pervading self. We'll stop right here. If you find this podcast helpful, please support it by donating any amount by going to the episode's website at neilbhatt.podbean.com or at chinmayarichmond.org. Thank you. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.